You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Solana, Doge, and more. Cryptocurrencies and digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity, provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments throughout the world's leading crypto derivatives markets. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amberdata. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amberdata delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amberdata eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of crypto derivatives. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back. It is Monday. It is pretty much right after the option block. Time to roll on into the realm of all things crypto derivatives with the Crypto Rundown. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com. Couple of things to remind you at the top of the show. If you like what you hear and you're missing out on the rest of the network, make sure wherever you're listening to this, upgrade to the full network. It doesn't cost you anything. And then, of course, if you want to go above and beyond, you want to get your own exclusive podcast feed with the 2 additional programs coming at you, as well as early access giveaways, all sorts of fun. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro, the place to go to learn more. As we learn who's joining us on this just rock'em sock'em, nigh on historic week, a lot popping off almost immediately after we turned off the microphones last week. So we knew we had to bring back on one more time our old pal, Mr. Greg Magadini from Amberdata, to break it all down. Greg, welcome back to the show, sir.
Thank you, Mark. Happy to be here.
You know, it's like they conspire against us on the show. No sooner than we turn off the Crypto Rundown than bam, everything's approved, everything's trading willy-nilly, Greg. It's like they did it to spite us.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, it was a quick turnaround. We get the approval, then we get the trading right away. So exciting. Great stuff.
All right, let's not bury the lead any further, sir. Let's get right into it. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trending activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show we break down all the action in the world's leading digital asset. Yes, it was Bitcoin, and man, there's a lot going on. That's something you folks have been waiting for nigh on a year. Finally came to pass. We'll get there in a second. First, let's set the table, listeners. Kicking off the show, Bitcoin threatening 95K, about 94,733. We did flirt with 100K. We kissed it. Got so close to the sun, and then fell right back down. On our last show, 89,791. So up nearly 5,000 handles net show to show from where we were a week ago. But everyone who was waiting for that 100K level, call it what you will, validation for whatever reason, got so close to the sun, but didn't quite get there. But Greg, we'll get to all that fun in a second. We can't bury the lead any further. The thing that has been obsessing the options and indeed the crypto derivatives world ever since the SEC gave its blessing to the ETFs back in January was, okay, here we go. When are we going to get the actual options on the spot ETFs in our trading accounts? And then it turned out it was not for a long time. And I went down to the OIC conference, which was early summertime, closing in on 6 months after the ETFs were approved at that point. And I kind of did the run of the industry back then. You can go listen to those on the network if you're interested, listeners, if you haven't done so already. And I think, to put it mildly, the folks were not exactly optimistic about the chances to maybe ever see options on the, which sounds insane to say out loud, but these are people who are knee deep in the options and indeed the regulatory trenches. And they were saying there was so much pushback from the SEC on these things that it may just be a question of, maybe it was not going to get done. Certainly not by this year. And so it seemed pretty dire. I reinvestigated that not that long ago with some people, and it seemed like the answer was still pretty much the same out there. So it seemed like we weren't going to get these at all. It's certainly not this year, Greg. It just seemed like it was a done deal. IBIT was trading. Folks who could buy the underlying, kind of make your peace with that. And then, Greg, as I was saying, no sooner do we turn off the microphones last week than all of a sudden pretty much the noise comes in. But then not that long after we ended the show that, okay, it's approved. The next thing you know, bam, IBIT options are actually trading. So I'll get into all of the data and fun in a second, Greg. But let's start there. What was going through your mind as we saw these options that everybody has been waiting for the better part of a year finally come to fruition, sir?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that's very interesting is now that we have the spot ETF options, how do those compare to future options? So most of the crypto vol world's trading future options. I mean, that's Deribit, that's OKEX, that's all the CeFi exchanges. And then the ETFs that are based on the futures, which we've talked about multiple times on this show before, like BitO or ETHU or BitX and all that stuff. Those all have options based on ETFs that are built on the future. So what should be the difference between, cash ETF options or underlying physical ETF options and the future-based options? Well, one of the big things is the basis. How should that be priced different? Is there more volatility? Things like that. So it's very interesting to compare how this market opened up. IBIT volume, day one, 50% of the Deribit volume. So that's a big deal. And then if you look at the spreads are tight. It's not like BitO, it's not like BitX where you have these really wide spreads where things barely ever trade. There's a real tight market here, day one, right out of the gate. So it's very interesting to see that. And it's interesting to compare where vol is coming in versus Deribit, where vol is coming in versus BitO, stuff like that. So I think there's some interesting stuff out there.
That's enormous for a lot of listeners of this show, because that's been an issue since we started doing the show many years ago, Greg. We love crunching all this data, the volume, the skew and everything. But as you point out, it's all on Deribit. And for the lion's share of our landlocked U.S. audience, Greg, that was just inaccessible. And so for a lot of people, it was frustrating. They could play around with the futures and the options on futures on CME. They could use the BitOs, some of the other products of the world. And that gave them a lot of an approximation of a lot of what was going on out there. But they didn't have anything that was really rivaling the depth and the liquidity that we're seeing out there on Deribit that was accessible to the US-based audience. Now it is here. So that is really a huge deal, listeners. I can't really undersell it. And the fact that, Greg, were you surprised that it was so close, within spitting distance of Deribit just on day one, sir?
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. What really surprised me is how tight the spreads are and how much adoption there was right out of the gate. The fact that you did so much volume on day one is a big deal. And it makes me think that it opens up appetite for more, passive investors to own IBIT. So if you're a pension fund or something like that, well, now not only can you hedge your Bitcoin exposure, but you can generate passive income. And so this is the first time that this segment of the market who's been locked out has been able to own it, sit on it, and generate some sort of income against it. So very interesting.
Let's crunch some of the numbers then, listeners, because this is just, again, this is the sea change for all of you folks who've been listening for years and saying, man, I like to play in these, but maybe the Maras or the BitXs and BitOs of the world, not really doing it for me. I want the spot. I don't want futures. I don't want a company that is crypto adjacent, has all kinds of other issues in there. I want spot. I want to be able to do it in a securities account. All the things that you've kind of been lacking in some of the other products. Finally here, listeners. So yeah, we can finally do it now. Waiting nearly a year just since the approval, and of course, much longer. We've been talking, Greg, about a spot ETF in Bitcoin since we launched this show. Obviously, that conversation goes much earlier than that in the crypto realm. It's just been the one thing that everyone has been chasing forever. And the fact that it is finally here, hard to undersell what this means for you folks out there. Again, I've said it before on other shows. Even if you're a crypto hater, even if you don't believe in any of these underlyings as a long-term prospect, if you're an options trader, at the end of the day, what do you need? You need the two V's. You need volume and you need volatility. Greg just laid it down. IBIT has both in spades. If you just want to trade around some products, get in, get out, get some decent spreads, get some decent liquidity, have some nice volume for your trades and some nice volatility, IBIT is there. You don't need to go out there and buy and hold IBIT till the cows come home. You can trade around it using options. And that's all really that options traders need. Coming into today, IBIT having a nice run, 54 even as we're kicking off the show. And again, these numbers that Greg was talking about, this thing has only been live less than a week, listeners. I mean, if you haven't been around the options game for a while, you don't know how rare it is to have a new product come out of the gate this hot. But this is hot. I mean, the ADV is 321,000 contracts a day. And they're already almost at that today, 270,000 on the tape right now. So again, this is some rarefied air that we're hanging out in right now. If you're wondering what is the 30-day vol out there, and IBIT is at about a 61.5, so pretty frothy. Also lining up pretty well with what we're seeing out here on Deribit. Let's look at the vol here on Deribit. 30-day vol on Deribit, 58, up from about a 56.5 last week. A 7-day vol about a 59, down from 61.5 last week. And the 180-day vol on Deribit, 60.75, up about exactly 5 points from 55.75 this time last week. So yeah, Greg, it is kind of fascinating to see, you're right, just how closely these products are lining up. You can always assume there's going to be an arb between these things, but you never know at the end of the day until they really hit the ground running exactly what we're going to see. In terms of size positions in IBIT right now, the big dog, 57,000 of the Jan doubles, the Jan 55s, which not that outlandish of a strike in a month, all things considered, listeners, how much this thing has been on a rampage. Of course, if we break through the 100K level, probably going to break through the 55 level, of course, and IBIT. So those are looking pretty decent. Nearly 60,000 of those already in just a week. Number two, listeners, almost 21,000 of the Feb doubles. So that 55 strike capturing a lot of imagination out there right now. Number three, 18, almost 19,000 of the D's 65. So they probably got a bit of a ways to go on those. But again, if you break 100K, all bets are off. Number four, 17,000 of the D60s. So maybe some vertical action there. And number five, 16,000 as well of the Feb 65. So Greg, things lighten it up all over the place. I know for you guys on the analytics side, it's got to be kind of a fun time for you. Everyone's obsessed with crypto options again, Greg. So what are you folks doing over there at Amberdata to deal with this flow of people?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things we're really excited about is we have the IBIT data day one. So we have the trade data, we have the vol surface, we have the delta surface, we have all the data you need for that. So that's pretty exciting. And it's just kind of interesting to be able to look at everything in one place. Now you can look at Deribit, now you can look at IBIT, you can see how those things move together or if there's any sort of opportunity between them. So that's really what we've been working on and providing for our customers. So excited about that.
That is awesome that you have the IBIT data there for them as well. So now they can go one place, listeners. You can get the Deribit and you can get the securities-based stuff on the ETFs out there as well, like IBIT. So you don't need to log into multiple platforms to see it, which is, again, one-stop shopping for your crypto analytics. Not the worst thing, listeners. I'm looking right now in terms of paper out there in IBIT today. Again, it's lighting up the tape out there today. Almost 10,000, about 9,800 or so of the Jan doubles have traded today. So this is the hot strike for whatever reason. If you're wondering what they're trading for around $5.50, $5.60, somewhere in that range. So we're seeing blocks of them trading throughout the day out here today. So $5.50 for the Jan 55 calls in IBIT, listener. That's a $1 out of the money call. Would you be a buyer or a seller at that level? I'm curious. So I'm guessing all the crypto heads out there, probably buyers, but you never know. Some good yield to the upside. Greg, as you're looking at these levels lining up out here in IBIT versus everything else, again, it's kind of lining up similar to what we're seeing in Deribit. So are you liking some of the same trades we were looking at before? Maybe some verticals, maybe taking advantage of some out-of-the-money covered calls to get yield? What are you looking at in IBIT right now, sir?
Yeah, well, I think one of the most interesting things is now we have a 2-year option. So Deribit would launch quarterly options, and 360 days out was the furthest out. Now we have a 2-year. So it's interesting to look at long-term realized vol. If I look over the past 4 years, the median long-term realized vol in Bitcoin is about 60. The upper 75th percentile is about 74. So this is a 180-day look-back window, big look-back window. And so that vol is also structurally been coming down. So if I look at IBIT right now, I look at the 2-year option, vol is 83. So to me, it kind of makes sense that it probably comes out high out of the gate, but we're going to have a structural come down in vol. So I think there's probably some interesting trades to do that take advantage of these statistically expensive options, I should say. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen. If there's some crazy Bitcoin reserve thing or whatever, Bitcoin can do anything. But from a time series analysis perspective, vol at 83 for 2 years is on the higher side for sure.
I mean, look right now. I just said those 55 calls in January, which is pretty much the at the money strike listeners, are trading for 550. That's a straight 10% right off the top right now if you just went and sold those right now through January. So there are some decent vol levels to be harvested if you were so inclined. If you want to buy them, a little bit pricey, obviously, but that's kind of the way Bitcoin tends to roll. Let's go through some of the other skew data from your platform here, Greg. Let's go out to the weekly skew right now. Again, all this coming from Deribit right now, listeners. But again, lining up pretty close to what we're seeing out here in all things IBIT. So it's going to be pretty interesting to start comparing and contrasting these two now that we have another hot trading market for you folks here in the U.S. to sink your teeth into. The weekly skew, listeners, it's actually flat right now, which is kind of interesting. Positive 3.3 last week. So I think the fact that we flirted with 100K, then kind of gave up the ghost, at least right around showtime here. Maybe some folks kind of just exhausted a little bit in the weekly skew. We'll see that start evolving as the week goes on. 30-day skew, positive 2.3 last week, positive 3.5 right now. So getting a little bit juicier out there on the 30-day front. And going out 6 months, hodlers are going to hodl, and they're doing so in spades right now. Positive 375 on the show. Last week, positive 575. So gaining a full 2 points on the 6-month skew spectrum. Mr. Greg, anything catching your eye in Bitcoin skew this week?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we saw, with this little pullback is a little bit of the divergence in the short-term stuff. So the short-term stuff, obviously getting bid to the put side or negative risk reversal skew is how we like to quote it. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, the long-term trend is, positive spot vol regime. And so we can see anything beyond 1 week out is still in the positive risk reversal space. So the way that I think about that is that the sort of long-term option pricing sentiment remains positive spot vol regime. And then this little pullback in the short term is negative. So to me, this trend is completely intact is how I like to think about it.
Speaking of trends, the new product trend is hot right now in the Bitcoin option space, Mr. Greg. I just saw this release came out from Cboe last week. They announced that they're going to launch what they're terming the first cash-settled options product related to Spot Bitcoin beginning, not this week, obviously, because it's the truncated holiday week here in the U.S., listeners, but next Monday, December 2nd. They're saying this is the first cash-settled index options related to the price of Spot Bitcoin. You might say, well, what's the big deal? We got IBIT. What's the difference with this? Well, this is not based off IBIT, listeners. This is actually based on the new Cboe Bitcoin US ETF index, designed to reflect the performance of Spot Bitcoin ETFs listed on US. So this sounds like it's an aggregate index, Greg, of the various Spot Bitcoin ETFs, and now you could trade cash settled options on these. They're going to offer a standard and a mini, as well as a flex, which is very hot right now, the flex world out there. So there you go, Greg. I guess you didn't know you needed cash settled options on a basket of the ETFs, but you got it coming from the Cboe, sir. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, interesting. Let's see how it picks up. I would imagine that most of the volume will be concentrated in the ETFs, but maybe some big players are going to trade some blocks or something on a cash settled index.
When I first saw this release, I thought, oh, they're just announcing the listing of IBIT options. But then I said, oh no, it's their own index. So there you go, Greg. You got some more data to model coming soon for the one-stop shop that is Amberdata out here. Let's keep rolling some of the other products. We can probably do IBIT the rest of the show, listeners, but we'll keep an eye on it. Let's go out to BitO. I don't know, Greg, now that IBIT's the big dog in town, you think we see BitO start to dry up, sir?
Yes, I definitely think the volume will be more concentrated in the IBIT, but I still think BitO and BitX have their place. There's still interesting dynamics to the underlying futures. I still think that the basis trade, which right now is yielding about 15% annualized, which means that there's a drag on BitO. People can actually own IBIT, which is the cash or the physical, and then sell CME futures against that and really capture essentially a risk-free 15% basis carry. So I think the CME futures are going to be around for a while, and therefore I think BitO and BitX are for sure going to be around for a while. In terms of where do people trade the options, I would say probably like 20-80, 20% BitO, 80% sort of the IBIT complex. But like I said before, there's definitely an interesting place for cover call strategies or anything like that tries to capture sort of that basis that's embedded in the BitO ETF.
Let's see what else is embedded out here in BitO this week, listeners. 25.40 up nearly $1, about 90 cents from where it was this time last week. The ADV continues to tick up, so despite the rumors of its demise, at least for right now, BitO holding firm. 220,000 contracts. That's nothing to sneeze at from an ADV perspective. That's up another 11,000 this week. I think just the explosion of interest in all things Bitcoin options, that rising tide is going to lift all boats. Will that persist over time? I guess that's the question, listeners. Right now, today, not quite halfway to that ADV, and we're closing in towards the end of the session, so it doesn't seem like it's going to hit it today. Still 103,000. That's nothing to sneeze at. VIX wasn't even at that level last week on the option blog when we were talking about it. So these are decent numbers out here still in the, and certainly when you get to IBIT, just blowing the doors off out here. Vol-wise at a 68 on the 30-day vol front, up about 7 points. Let's go on out to your favorite, your beloved BitX, Greg. A 57.75 when we kicked off the show, up about 4 points from where it was this time a week ago. The ADV, 55,000, so also ticking up about 7,000 this week, so looking pretty robust. Again, that IBIT rising tide lifting all the boats, doing nearly 2x that today, 97,000. So unlike BitO, BitX lighting up the tape out there today, 97,000 contracts on the tape. The vol, 30-day vol at a 121 out there in BitX, so kind of unched down about 2 points. BitX, by definition, is going to be a pretty volatile product out there. So Greg, despite rumors to the contrary of their impending demise, BitO doing decent volume, but BitX lighting up the tape today, sir. What say you?
Yeah, and I think there's some interesting types of structures. So obviously, we've talked about this a million times, but the BitX drag is part of the pricing mechanism. But BitX is 2x performance BitO. And so theoretically, the vol should be, if I'm looking at 1 year, 417 DTE vol on BitX, I see it at 116. On IBIT, I see it at 80. So, you would think it's closer to 2x minus the drag effect. So I kind of wonder if there's some structures to be done there, if there's something that's kind of interesting. Obviously, BitX, the forward's going to be lower because of those drags, also the 2x ETF decay factor. So all of that stuff is kind of translating into a lower vol, so to speak. But, what's the exact right ratio, and is there an opportunity there? I think there might be.
Let's see what other opportunities we can spot and some of the other hot Bitcoin and related products. Let's go out to Greg's favorite MSTU. We were joking, but really only half joking about this one, listeners. This is for the true crypto and indeed options and vol degenerates out there. I mean, look at this thing. 182 and 3/4 when we kicked off the show. Up nearly 23 handles, 2285 from where it was this time last week. 7,000 contracts on the tape today. The ADV is 6,900. That's up 1,800 from this time a week ago, listeners. So you folks, you degenerates out there, can't get enough of MSTU. Just a hot one out here, listeners. And in terms of top positions right now, the big dog in MSTU, 2,100 of the D250s. And that may sound like crazy talk, about 70 handles out of the money by December. But again, it's up $22 just this week. So this turnaround, this action out here has been something to watch, Mr. Greg. What's catching your eye in your beloved crypto degenerate product, MSTU, sir?
Yeah, well, I think MSTU and MSTR, which is MicroStrategy, are really kind of key components to the current rally. So the way that Michael Saylor is buying a bunch of Bitcoin is that he's selling equity directly in the market for MSTR. MSTR is trading at a premium. I think it's about 3 times premium to balance sheet Bitcoin. But what's even more interesting is that they're selling convertible bonds. And so convertible bonds with 0 coupon, while the owners get these 55% out of the money 5-year options. And so the sort of the valuable component of that convertible bond is the embedded option. And if I'm looking at the term structure of MSTR, we're kind of looking at 200% implied volatility for the short term, and then kind of 120 way out into the long-term options. So that embedded optionality to the convertibles is really valuable. So as long as that vol is high, then the convertibles are attractive. And if the convertibles are attractive, then Michael Saylor can get more money to buy more Bitcoin, and therefore the fuel behind the rally theoretically continues. So looking at MicroStrategy vol to me is a very, interesting puzzle piece to everything that's going on right now. MSTU, which is the 2 times MSTR, that's obviously an insane product at this type of level of vol. And I actually just read over the weekend that some of the prime brokers who provide the swap lines for the 2x performance of MSTU are starting to get a little nervous about sort of the vol of it and being able to provide sort of that leverage. And I wonder if there's any sort of a neutering risk like we saw in SPXY back in the day. Could that happen to something like MSTU? I don't know, but that's something to keep in mind and something that I'm definitely thinking about.
Why would this product make prime brokers nervous? I have no idea why it would why it would make a risk manager nervous, Greg. This product that is solely for the hardcore degenerates out there. Yeah, if they neutered to some of these others in the past, everyone's favorite SVXY and stuff, then maybe it might be a little bit of the old neutering hammer coming down for good old MST. And we're not predicting anything, listeners, just something to bear in mind. And if that happens, it will happen mid-cycle quite often. You're not going to get much warning, which can be catastrophic if you're holding premium on some of these names. So just something to bear in mind if you're out here slinging these things hot and heavy out here. Speaking of hot and heavy, man, Mara just continues to refuse to die. Gets crushed right back down to close to 17 again, which is kind of the bottom of his 52-week range, then right back up, roaring back to life like it is again right now. 26.45 as we kicked off the show, up 8 1/3 handles just since last week out here. Listen, actually kissed almost a 28.89 earlier this morning. So this thing's been on the rampage. The ADV, 450,000 contracts again. That's nothing to sneeze at out there right now. That's up 73,000 from just a week ago. So folks are slinging Bitcoin and crypto-related options like it is going out of style right now. And right now, speaking of which, 668,000 contracts on the tape. And when we joke about VIX numbers, I'll have to look. That probably is beating VIX. It's beating VIX as of this morning, what VIX was putting up. Yeah, VIX has only traded 419,000. So Mara right now, 668,000. You're talking over 50% more than what VIX has put up. That shows you what kind of numbers we're talking. These are just off the charts. The vol 136 up a whopping 22 points from this time last week. And we know somebody was maybe getting a little excited, maybe getting a little antsy out here with these Jan 30s. This has been the big position we've been watching in Mara forever. They keep flirting with it. They keep getting away from it. They really started putting these on, it looks like, back in May for some size, and they've been piling on ever since. Back then, Mara was at about $19.50. These options closed at $4.10. They started nibbling some more and some more. Looks like they've added a few more since, and actually maybe taken some off, which is kind of interesting, back in the last couple of weeks as we keep flirting with and retreating from this 30 strike here, listeners. Even still, there's still nearly 50,000 open, 49,000. So for however many they've taken off, people have added more. It's only down 800 from this time a week ago. So that is still our size position. Again, we almost hit that level just this morning. So it'd be fascinating to see if we do break through the 30 handle, what happens to this long-standing size position here in Mara. Do they take it off? Do they roll it? Interesting stuff. Mr. Greg, anything catching your eye out here in Mara? And are you the one who's sitting on nearly 50,000 of the Jan 30s for the better part of this year, sir?
No, definitely not. I think Mara is kind of, people are starting to view it in terms of something that has the same profile as an MSTR that should have some sort of explosive upside. Then we have legislation that might be good for miners. So all that should be pretty bullish, and maybe that justifies some sort of explosive upside. But like you said, if I look at the Mara chart over multiple years, this thing does not perform like its peers, and it kind of just has been consolidating for a better part of the four past years.
Greg, we can probably keep talking about Bitcoin-related options trading for another couple hours, but we got to keep on rolling and explore the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, welcome to the altcoin universe, the portion of the show where we explore everything outside of the big dog, which is Bitcoin. Except for right now when we get into this absolute slugfest that is going on here in the bottom half of our top 10 from a market cap perspective. Last week, it cost you $17.6 billion to break into the top 10. And that was to our old pal Tron, Greg's favorite. Can't stop buying Tron when he's not on the show. This week, it is still Tron, number 10, but looking a little bit lighter, about $17 billion. So we're talking about this rising tide lifting all boats, but on the bottom half of our top 10, not so much. Number 10, Tron. Number 9, Cardano, listeners, $35 billion worth of market cap. Number 8, USD coin, $38.75 billion. Number 7, everybody's favorite, Elon's favorite, it's Doge. Maybe you hate it out there. Number 7, 58, almost $59 billion worth of market cap. That's up almost $6 billion just from this time last week, listeners. Number 6, XRP, man, almost $1.50. $83.5 billion worth of market cap. This thing was 50 cents forever, so you're talking nearly 3x. So starting to catch up. Who knows? Maybe you'll be able to trade it on a US-based exchange sometime in the near future. So if you wanted to take part in this 3x XRP rally, maybe you could. Number 5, BNB, $92.3 billion. Number 4, it's Solana, $113.8 billion. Number 3, it's Tether, $132.6 billion. Number 2, it's ETH, because of course it is, $414.6 billion. And the big dog this week, Bitcoin, $1.873 trillion with the T worth of market cap, listener. Let's get out here, though, to number 2 in market cap. Maybe not number 1 in a lot of your hearts. We kind of discussed this on the show last week. ETH's kind of been trailing, getting a little bit of a lift this week. 31.14 on the show last week, 34.60 this week. So maybe starting to catch up about 350 handles on the week. I even saw this right before I got on the show, Greg. Kind of funny. It reminded me of exactly what we were saying on the show last week. Maybe they listened to the show, I don't know, on Market Watch, but they had a big headline today, Greg. Ether's not dead yet. Here are 3 ways a second Trump term could help it catch up to Bitcoin's rally. That whole article, I didn't have a chance to read it right before showtime. I kind of just skimmed the beginning of it here. But they mentioned what we were saying on the show last week. ETH up 50% so far this year, but less than the 128% gain seen by Bitcoin, and maybe more alarming for some folks, dwarfed by what we're seeing in Solana, which up 133% year to date. So they're kind of pointing out some of the things you mentioned on the show last week, but they also mentioned maybe the Trump administration could be a shot in the arm for ETH. So, Mr. Greg, what do you think? Obviously, folks listening to the show, what do you think about maybe the narrative that maybe ETH's not done yet? Don't stick a fork in it yet, sir.
Yeah, well, I think there's an argument to be made that just the beta of the market could definitely bring ETH higher. So that's kind of the baseline argument. Then someone just told me that Trump's wallet was doxxed and he was mostly in ETH. I haven't verified that, but that's kind of funny. But then I think really the big story for smart contract blockchains is if we get growth in crypto through deregulation, that's good for all, base layer protocol chains, which includes Solana, which includes Ethereum. So that should be bullish for Web3 tech. So I think that's good. Obviously, we've chatted about the deflation to inflation flip for ETH, which is the reason why ETH has been underperforming. That hasn't changed, so that narrative still is out there. But hey, it might just get overshadowed by market beta. So don't underestimate the market beta. There's a lot of people who want to buy the coin that's been lagging, betting that it's going to catch up. So a true kind of explosive bull run past 100K on Bitcoin probably lifts all boats.
That rising tide is hard to ignore, listeners, as we point out pretty much week after week here on the show. Let's get into some of the vol and skew numbers for ETH listeners. Weekly vol ticking up again this week, so some of that rally in ETH maybe energizing folks a little bit. We were at about a 70 on the show last week and 80 right now, so ticking up nearly 10 points. A 30-day vol, 63 3/4 last week, a full 74 right now, so ticking up over 10 points on the 30-day vol, which is fascinating. The hodlers out here, 180-day vol, a whopping 63 on the show last week, 71.65 this week. So, Greg, vol and ETH land getting a little bit juicy, sir. What's catching your eye out there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very interesting if you look at those like 2x products as well. So if I look at ETHU, for example, it's the BitX of Ethereum, which is 2x futures ETF performance. And so that has a pretty high vol term structure. If I look at the money vol, close to the 200s out into the March contract, a little bit of a contango as well. So that's a pretty juicy product. Again, has that type of decay to it in terms of the futures contango as well. So that's kind of an interesting product. And then again, theoretically, ETH should have a higher beta than Bitcoin. So it's kind of normal that we see it at a premium to Bitcoin in terms of relative vol. But one of the things that's really interesting is like today, we've seen a huge ETH outperformance versus Bitcoin. And so you have a little bit of divergence in term structures. Bitcoin is kind of flattish to slightly down, and then ETH is in backwardation. So that's kind of an interesting thing. But overall, ETH should have a little bit of a premium, and it's about 10-point premium right now.
ETH was just waiting, Greg. They're playing catch up this week. That's all. They just need a little time to get their ducks in a row, and now ETH roaring back to life, Greg. Here we go. The flippening happening sometime next year, Greg. You heard it here first. What do you think?
Love it.
That would certainly be interesting. What if Solana takes that spot? That would certainly be fascinating as well. Let's go on out to the skew data, see what it's telling us out here in ETH land, listeners. Getting a little frothy out there as well, mostly to the upside again as ETH is playing this aggressive game of catch-up. Got a ways to go to catch up. It's positive 1.6 on the weekly skew last week, positive 4 1/3 this week, so getting spicy there. Going out a full 30 days, nearly a positive 2 last week, so mildly bullish. Going on to a full positive 6 this week, so gaining over 4 points, so looking a little bit frothier. Again, we're gaining almost 400 handles to the upside this week, 350, so not exactly surprising we're seeing some juice in the skew. Going out a full 6 months, listeners, also getting a little frothy out there as well, positive 4.3 last week. This week, positive 6.2, so up nearly 2 points going out 6 months. So, Greg, the hodlers, they're coming back to life in ETH. I'm telling you, here comes the flipping insert.
Yeah, I love it. I think one of the things that's pretty interesting is we can just see from the options market, like what are some of the probabilities being priced in. So we have our cumulative distribution function. So I just want to read out a couple things here. So ETH all-time high is about 5K. If we're looking at the probabilities of, let's say, being above 5K by the end of the year, this is on Deribit, the December 27th expiration. That's a 5% probability, which you could actually argue that might be a little bit low. And if you look at the probability in June of next year, so that's kind of the longest expiration, that's 25% probability. So kind of interesting to see what's being priced out there. So something to keep in mind.
So roughly 5 delta for the Dece 5000s and roughly 25 delta for the June 5000. Interesting. I'm with you. I think that's a little low for Dece. Maybe Jan, maybe somewhere there's some middle ground to be found in there. Of course, December's coming up, listeners. But at this rate, who knows? Maybe ETH going to be a yo-yo, listeners. Is going to sling back and catch up before the end. Are you still all in on ETH? Have you maybe started migrating to some other assets out there? Have you never been on ETH? Have you been all in on Greg's favorite Tron? Hit us up. Let us know. As we keep rolling, let's go out to, it's number 4 overall in market cap. We used to talk about it a lot on the show. I think it's going to have to start making its way back into the rotation, especially as it continues to climb the ranks. This is Solana, of course. Last show, 234.80. This week, 239.34, up nearly $5, about $4.50 on the week. So quite the run out there. And if you are interested, I was only half joking earlier about Greg's platform really being kind of the one-stop shop for all your crypto analytics. You can see at the top, if you log in, listeners, you can see Bitcoin, you can see ETH. Right next to it, it's Solana. Now, Greg has warned before, and one of the reasons we kind of dialed back on talking about it is that the liquidity isn't quite there yet. But you know what? $200+ asset, it's going to start seeing some more options liquidity. That's kind of how these products work. So we'll just do a little quick snapshot right now. Maybe we'll let this grow over time as the liquidity picture firms up and evolves in Solana. Right now, the 30-day skew in Solana, surprise, surprise, it's bullish, listeners, 10.63. So compare that to what we're seeing on the 30-day front, of course, out here in ETH. You were at about a positive 6. And when we were talking about Bitcoin a little bit earlier, listeners, we had the 30-day skew out there at about a positive 3.5. So obviously Solana looking far more biased to the upside than either of those two over the next 30 days, which again, hard to argue. Solana's been on a bit of a rampage. A 30-day vol out there at about almost a 90, 88, which given the breadth of these moves lately, you could argue maybe is a little cheap. Things been rocking and rolling. Greg, we're going to start working some more of this data back into the show because I think Solana is at that level again. I know you've been kind of a little bit cautious because of liquidity issues, but what are your thoughts out here about what we're seeing shaping up in Solana, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I think Solana, from a fundamental perspective, it's gotten a lot of attention lately. People have been migrating away from ETH to Solana. And then from sort of a vol perspective, it's just an interesting asset just because it's a higher vol asset compared to Bitcoin and Ethereum. So there's definitely a lot of potential sort of upside stuff and downside stuff that can be done in the vol space. So I definitely think it's worth keeping an eye on. If you can get some liquidity off, we're talking about potentially getting a Solana ETF here. So if we get that actually kind of opens up the door for some US players. So it's kind of interesting to think about all that. But yeah, again, for the most part right now, most of the US market's locked out of it. There's not a CME future or CME options for Solana, and there's not yet an ETF. So everyone's kind of can only trade on Deribit, so to speak.
We're getting to that price level, Greg, where 200 plus, when's the ETF coming? So it seems like we're getting into that rarefied air there, listeners. Let's go out some other names. Speaking of rarefied air, XRP, nearly $1.50. When's the last time you saw that? It's been some time, listeners. This thing rocking it out of the gate last couple of weeks. It was $1.08 last week, which in and of itself was a sea change. That's up another nearly 40 cents this week, so up to $1.47. So on the rampage, Greg, I know in the past you've said XRP, not exactly your favorite. Has this moved to $1.50, pretty much tripling in the last couple of weeks? Has that changed your mind at all, sir?
No, it hasn't changed my mind. And this really makes me think of the last time we had a sort of mega rally. XRP came out to $3 a coin. This was back in, peak 2017, early 2018, right when we got the CME futures launch. XRP spiked as high as $3, and then a month later had crashed all the way back to 50 cents. Did we had a Q4 2020 / Q1 2021 major rally in crypto that spiked XRP back up to $2, and then it probably crashed back down. So, XRP is like the VVIX of VIX trading. It kind of peaks out at the top of markets. And so that's how I'm viewing XRP. So if we get XRP at $2, $3, it's a pretty good contrarian signal for the rest of the market.
There we go. Fade XRP, says Greg out here. Maybe at this rate, we're going to be revisiting the levels that hit a while ago. If this keeps up in a couple of weeks out here, listeners. So all you XRP holders who've been locked, can't even really trade it here in the US. Somehow you've had some liquidity in it already. If you've been locked, maybe you can finally get some liquidity to exit. Not the worst thing. Making up for many, many years worth of lost time just in the last couple of weeks. Doge, 36 cents on the show last week, almost 36.5 cents. About 40.5 cents this week, so up about 4 cents. Litecoin, 86.85 last week, 95.13 this week, up about 8 1/4. Cardano, 72.9 cents last week, 102 this week, up about almost 30 cents. Polkadot, 5.76 last week, 8.57, up a whopping 2.81. Polkadot on the rampage. And everyone's beloved Shiba Inu. Are we going to be able to buy those Shiba Lambos this week, listeners? It was at 1,000,000 2439 this week, a whopping 2554. So not quite there on the Lambos, but maybe, I don't know, maybe you're going to get a lug nut or two on the hubcaps of those beloved Lambos. Man, Greg, we did a lot of living on the show this week, most of it on the Bitcoin options front. I got a feeling that's going to be the way things are for a little bit here on the show. Everyone and their mother and their grandmother's cousin all piling into IBIT, sir. Not the worst thing. I love seeing so many people in the market just gravitating towards crypto options. It's a great thing at the end of the day, just from a volume and liquidity perspective out here. It's going to be fascinating to watch how this all plays out. But that music means we're done for this week. But before we go, if you have any other things that are catching your eye in the altcoin universe you want to share with the folks, have at it. And then if folks want to kick the tires on this one-stop shop for all things crypto, derivatives, analytics, where should they go? What should they do, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. On the altcoin space, I think, keep an eye open for interesting projects, especially if we get sort of a growth through deregulation. There's going to be some interesting altcoin trading opportunities and investment opportunities. If you want to check out our stuff, please go to pro.amberdata.io. You can check out all the graphs, all the vol surfaces, get free access to the application. So very excited about that. If you want to learn more about our weekly insights into the market, you can go to amberdataderivatives.substack.com. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can go to @GenesisVol.
Everybody moving over to Substack, Greg. I feel like I should have a Substack. And every time I talk to somebody, it's like Substack. This thing from like the 2010s, all of a sudden back, and it's hot again. Everybody's loving Substack. So I feel like I'm being left out, Greg. I need to make a Substack now. So maybe look for our options insiders. We got enough going on the website, listen. You don't need a Substack. But check out Greg's. He's got some good stuff cooking. Substack, suddenly the hot place for all your financial analysis and data out here on the options side. Certainly as well. I know a good buddy, Dr. Vix, is over there. I know Mr. Vixologist is now rocking on Substack. So Substack, a lot going on. If you want to talk some vol, crypto, equity, or anything above, sounds like Substack a good place to go. And of course, you know where to go already. Amberdata.io, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. Greg just announced it on the show last week. They're making this GUI freely available to everybody. So if you're even remotely intrigued by these markets and you're listening to this show, so I have to assume you are, then what are you doing if you're not kicking the tires and lighting the fires? Amberdata.io, the place to go to learn more. We got to get on out of here for today, listeners. Back again tomorrow with our buddy, the Oracle of New Hampshire, to break down all things options and advisors, a little bit of the old advisors option. We'll talk a lot of vol and skew and everything else on that show as well. It's inescapable. Then back again on Wednesday for a double header of Options Bootcamp, a show that many of the listeners of this program who are newer to the world of options, you should be mainlining Options Bootcamp if you're not already. Very popular show out there these days. We'll talk you off the ledge, give you some explainers on these wild options things. So some of these terms maybe we're throwing around on this show, skew, vol, term structure, all these things, maybe they're a little bit confusing to you. Check out Options Bootcamp It will get you up to speed on all this fun stuff we're talking about. Then, of course, we're off here for the holidays in the U.S. Thursday and Friday. Back again next Monday. What wild things will be going on in crypto? What new products will we have to sink our teeth into? I guess we'll find out next week. Have a great holiday if you're here in the U.S., listeners. We'll see you back here next week. Another episode of the Crypto Rundown. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amberdata. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amberdata delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amberdata eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.